guys, I'm Sarah, welcome back to my channel, and welcome to my next wrap-up of books that I've read of 2024. My next wrap-up, which you will have already seen my favorite books of 2024, so let's talk some negativity, and let's talk about the worst, most disappointing books of 2024. Yeah, people tend to really like these videos, even though they're kind of negative, but I mean, I'll admit, I like watching people's negativity videos too. It is helpful to see what didn't work for somebody with certain books and what might not work for you or whatever. Sometimes it's just fun to listen to people rant. Let's just all admit it right now. Sometimes it's just fun to listen to everybody rant about things that they don't like. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. These are not necessarily all the books I have DNF'd. These are just books that I had a certain expectation for in whatever way, shape, or form, and in some way, shape, or form, they have let me down. Now, there's there's about 2 books on this list that or 3 actually, 3 books on this list that I didn't really have any, high expectations, low expectations. I really didn't have any expectations for them, but they ticked me off in one way or another, so they're on this list. So yeah, if you want to see all the books I've ever DNF'd, I do have a shelf on Goodreads of all the books I have DNF'd. Many of these books are on that list. So yeah, I'll go ahead and put a link to that down below in the description in case you're curious to see what kind of books I've DNF'd, because yeah, some of them that I DNF'd last year just didn't work for me. There was nothing wrong with them. They were perfectly fine. They just weren't working for me, and I wasn't going to bother trying to keep reading them. So these are all the ones that, though, either I did finish, I quit because of these certain things. One of them I haven't even read, but I want to talk about because I was so ticked off by this last year. I'm still ticked off about it, let's be real. And a couple of these are probably going to be surprises because of circumstances. But anyways, we're just going to dive right in to the first one. I will try not to, take too long. And also, if you like any of these books or these manga, because there's some manga on here too, that I have mentioned, and you really like them, they're your favorites, that is great. Just because I dislike something doesn't mean you should then dislike your favorite things. They just didn't work for me on a number of levels, or they had things in them that bugged me. So, this is my personal opinion, not anybody else's. So yeah, take my opinion with a grain of salt. And yeah, let's just get into some fun ranting, because sometimes you just need to rant. Okay, the first one I'm going to talk about is a series I was enjoying, but the last few volumes that I read before I DNF'd this manga series, yeah, they weren't working for me. That is Rurouni Kenshin. This series, I was actually really enjoying up to, I forget what volume. I know I quit on volume 17. I did not continue 18 through, what was the final volume anyways? 20 something? 24? That could be incorrect. I don't know. I didn't read those. But I stopped after volume 17. I felt that was a good enough ending for me. And I didn't like, when I did look through the next few volumes, I didn't like the direction we were going in, because I thought, didn't Kenshin already go through this? So I was like, that's irritating. I really liked the earlier volumes of this series, but the last few volumes, I think it was, I forget which volume it was, 14, I think was the first one I rated like 3 stars. I felt the mangaka was getting way too violent with it. This series was already violent to begin with, but I think the blood and the gore and stuff he took to a level where it's like, it's not showing just the realities of war and, people's heads going bye-bye. But, it was showing more, it was more glorifying the violence after a while, rather than just showing it as, this is a horrible, tragic thing, and I did not like that. Also, he had some weird sexually charged comments in a couple of these volumes that I ended up reading 3 stars that I was just like, okay, do we really need this? This wasn't in here for like the first 10 plus volumes. Do we really need it now? Yeah, we didn't. Spoiler alert, we didn't need it. But anyways, so that's why I quit mainly with that one. Which I was very sad with, because I really liked the characters, and I really liked the story up until that point. But yeah, I didn't like where the continuation was going, and I just didn't like some of the elements that the mangaka put in there overall. I felt like it was highly unnecessary, and yeah. So, bye-bye. I'm very glad of what I did read, but I was very disappointed with the rest of it. Okay, the next one I have to talk about is, regrettably, another manga series. I promise we'll be getting to the novels soon, but this one, did I start it in 2023? I forget when I started it. I kept getting delayed because people kept checking out the volumes in the library, and I was just like, there's only one volume, now I have to wait. And then they wouldn't return it. It was a whole thing. Anyways, that is Demon Slayer. Yeah, this series I started because of recommendations from people I know, and like, they were like, it has a great message and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure it does. And I wasn't going to try the anime with this one because I know from seeing when one of the movies went to theaters, it was rated R. It's very violent. Yeah. I mean, they're pretty much attacking and killing these, like, technically they're vampires. They're not really demons, not in the biblical sense. They are vampires that these characters are killing and getting rid of. So, yeah, so yeah, I knew I probably wasn't going to watch the anime because way too much blood and violence. No, thank you. I'm not a fan of the art style either, but also, just regardless, I just was very underwhelmed by the story as a whole. I love the main character, Tanjiro. He's a great character. I really liked following him. Unfortunately, he couldn't save it for me. He couldn't save this series for me because I got to volume 5 or 6. I forget which one. The cover's up here. It got to volumes 5 or 6, and there would be little nuggets of things that I really liked that they said or that they represented, but there was way too much telling, which sounds really weird for a manga because they're showing you everything on the panels and stuff, but there was lots of info dumping, lots of telling in storytelling, and yeah, I just couldn't get into it. Like I said, Tanjiro was the only thing saving it for me, and it was just like, it was dragging. I didn't care for any of the other characters. The other two characters, which I think become his friends later on, all they did was, one of them was screaming, crying, sobbing baby. Like, wow, I still have issues with that character. But like, they both just screamed a lot. There was so much screaming in this series. Like, everyone was screaming about everything. It was just like, I don't want to watch the anime either. All they're gonna be doing is screaming. So, yeah, I quit this one mainly just because I didn't care. And nothing was saving it for me. Even the main character who I liked couldn't save it for me, so that's just a matter of opinion because I know lots of people love the manga and the anime of the series. It just didn't end up working for me, and I'm disappointed by that because I did really want to see, like some of these really nuggets of stuff that the author was putting in there, or the mangaka, excuse me, but I just couldn't handle it. So now we're going to jump onto the first novel on this list, and that is World Diver by Haley Hansen. Have any of you guys watched that Marvel movie, Spider-Man Homecoming? Yeah, that movie in the MCU. Yeah, if you watch that movie, this book felt like that movie, except without superheroes. We just had giant robots instead, and it was all the weird high school drama. And can't a girl have a guy best friend that doesn't fall in love with her? Is that not possible in fiction? I really want to know this, because, oh my goodness, it was, I finished this book. I contemplated continuing the next ones because I bought the whole trilogy, which has taught me, Sarah, do not do this again. Do not buy entire series unless you are absolutely positively sure you're going to like it, like you've read the books before in some other format, in some other way. Don't do this again. Which I'm not going to. That definitely taught me a lesson. But, regardless, this book annoyed me so much. The main character annoyed me. She was decent in some ways, but then at the same time, it was just like, girl, you were just irritating. Her best friend was irritating because, of course, he fell in love with her. Because, of course, he did. And then, of course, she doesn't like the best friend because, of course not. She likes this ghost guy. I kid you not. She's crushing on a ghost. Who may or may not be evil. Yes. Yeah, and it's a multiverse story, which is kind of the first thing that drew me in. It's a sci-fi multiverse series, but at the same time, we didn't do anything with the multiverse at this point. It's like, I don't know, the favorite part of this book for me were the robots. There was a tiny little robot who acted like a dog. He was cute. And then there was a big giant robot and that you could ride around in, and he was nice. They were about the only parts of this book I liked. I gave it a 3-star. I tried to continue the series. I didn't want to. But I read the last bit of the 3rd book just to see, hey, this is where they end up. Let me see if just reading that will put me in the spirit to read the rest of it. And I didn't care. Literally, I read the ending of the last book and I was just like, oh, cool. Let's go on to something else. Because, no, it just did not work for me. Regrettably. But, cool concept, not an execution that worked for me. Then we have not a manga, but this is a comic. This is part of the Marvel Action Avengers series. That is the Ruby Egress. This is the 2nd book in that series. This did not need to exist, is basically the whole premise of it. It sounds really cool, the whole premise of 3 of the superheroes getting sucked into this ruby, and the other Avengers have to get them out. But we actually don't see that happen. The art style is terrible. It looks like melting graffiti. If you've watched my reading wrap-ups when I talked about these comics, you will know I hate that art style. Apparently, anyways. At least in the context that it was in this book. And the whole thing literally didn't even need to exist. It did nothing for the overarching, story arc that they kind of were going on with the series, and it was pointless. I gave it 2.5 stars because there were a couple moments that I liked. So I gave it that. And I did finish it. And that was it. It was pointless. Moving on. Okay, this is going to be a surprise one because, well, surprise because this book was on my favorites list. It's also on my least favorites list. And I will explain in a moment why. That is The Gods Lost Their Way by Nikki Chapaway. Yes, this book made it onto 2 lists, 2 opposing lists. It's only on this list because it was not as good as the first one, and I was disappointed by that. The first one I gave 5 stars. This one I gave I think it was 4 stars or 4.5 stars, but I was expecting more from it, and it didn't have that more. So I was disappointed. Is this a great book and a great series that I would still recommend? Absolutely. However, yeah, I just was expecting far more than it delivered, and it still delivered on things that I liked, like the characters and stuff like that, but plot-wise, it didn't really do much. So, yeah, that is the only reason it is on this list. I would still buy a copy of this book, I would still read it, I would still recommend it to people. It just disappointed me in some ways, which is why I put it on the disappointing list. So, yeah. Actually, I'm going to say, in the same vein, I also have A House of Blood by Nikki Chapaway on here as well. Again, a book that made it onto the favorites list. This one, it was mainly the ending. The climax made no sense to me. I mean, when the 2 characters got out of this, tunnel thing that they were in, and they, went back to the village where they were. That's all I can say without spoilers, but, that part, the village part, made no sense to me. I did not understand what was going on with that. Maybe that, I did read an arc of this book, so maybe that was fixed up a bit in the final version. I don't know. I haven't read the final version yet, so, but yeah, and because, yeah, I still really love the characters of this. I don't also understand where one side character's plot is going in this whole thing and why we needed her point of view. I'm assuming that will get explained as the series goes on. Because this is I think going to be a fairly long series, so I'm just okay, she'll probably just explain that later on. But, yeah, it was just mainly the ending of this one. It wasn't as good as the first book, An Apprentice of Death, and, yeah, it disappointed me in that way. I still gave it I still gave it a 4.5 stars. Would I still shove this series at you and tell you to go read it if you like fantasy? Yes, I would. So, yeah, these 2 are the, weird outliers, because it's, I still really like them, but also at the same time, they disappointed me in some ways, so that's why they're here. And we go into probably my most hated book of this year. I took time to read this whole thing. I finished this thing, and the ending left me spitting mad. Like, I was probably frothing at the mouth mad by this book, and it's message that I don't think the author intended, but it came across that way to me. And that is October by J. Grace Pennington. This is a Christian contemporary story about an extremely obsessive girl who obsesses over this one, like, character who moves into her town for the summer, and she's, like, extremely rude to everybody else. Not the one who moved in. The main character, sadly. The main character was an awful person. And then I'm just gonna spoil this for you guys, so whatever. So if you don't want to see any spoilers for this book, just skip ahead a bit. Just like wait until the cover goes away or something. But anyways, yeah, the character who came for the summer that the main character's obsessed with, she has some, like, mental illness disorders and stuff like that, which is fine. And then at the end of the book, she committed suicide. Off screen. And basically the whole message that I felt this book gave was that, well, if you're different because of mental illness stuff, it would just be better if you weren't here. As somebody with depression and anxiety, I do not need that message in my life. Yeah, because it just felt like that's what it was saying, because it was like this character was so different in the world that, well, she couldn't just exist in it. And it was just like, that is not a message I want to hear. You know, I struggle enough. I don't really want to, I want to hear that I can find a way in this world, not just, you know, it would be better if I just, I hated this book. Mainly for the ending. I was going to be generous and give it 2 stars because it was just like, okay, I'm dragging my feet through this whole thing. But, and I don't even know why I finished this, except that I was morbidly curious to see why everybody on Goodreads seems to love this book. I do not know why. I've read another book by this author, and it was good. I hope it stays good when I reread it. But, yeah, this one, no, would not recommend. Like, I don't think the author was intending to give that message, but it came across that way to me, and I was spitting mad because of it. Don't recommend. Moving on. Okay. Oh no, this isn't much better to move on to. Of course, this is a very negative video. That is Sailor Moon. Volumes 3? Well, I only read, at least that I recorded, up to 5. I DNF'd Volume 5. I think, yes. I DNF'd Volume 5 on Goodreads. However, I did skim the rest of the volumes because I had all 10 volumes out. It's a 10-volume series. This is manga. So I skimmed the rest of them, and I was not pleased, which is partially why I DNF'd Volume 5 before I even got to some of the issues I had with it. But anyways, you're going to hear all that here. So, I love Volumes 1 and 2 of this series. Amazing. Great. Unfortunately, the stupid second volume ends with a stupid cliffhanger, so you can't just read those 2. I mean, you can, and just, like, look up spoilers online later to see, like, what is going on with this. I mean, you could probably do that just fine. But the first 2 volumes are great. The rest of it, not so much. I gave Volumes 3 and 4, like, 3 stars, I think. Yeah. Because I liked certain elements of it, but, like, the storytelling quality went downhill. Also, that little girl who shows up, she happens to be the future daughter of our main couple, Usagi and Mamoru, which are Sailor Moon and Tuxedo Mask, if you only know them by those names. So this little girl who shows up, she is like their future daughter, who has a crush on her teenage dad. That is really never discouraged. I mean, I will say Tuxedo Mask never encourages her. He just basically treats her like, you know, kind of like a dad to his daughter, which technically she is. So, I mean, good on him. He never encouraged it. But nobody ever really discouraged her either. So, like, yeah, I mean, I think at one point somebody did mention, yeah, you know, that's your future dad and stuff, but it was kind of, like, brushed off. So, okay. And she, like, at some point in the story with volumes 3 and 4, she does, like, kiss him a couple times while he's under brainwashing. So it's like, okay, great. And everyone likes to talk about non-consensual kissing when it's to a girl, but apparently to a guy, it's fine. Double standard here much? So there was that. And then in volume 5 and 6, it would have been 6, but I never read that far enough to record it on Goodreads. I did look ahead, though. There was a same-sex relationship brought up. Which, like, okay, I didn't really think that would be in this series, but apparently it is. And apparently, from something else I read, it was something the author, the mangaka, really wanted to put in there and was, like, really proud of. So I was like, okay, I mean, like, whatever. I know those people exist in the world, and they can do what they want. Doesn't mean I want to read about it. So yeah, I canceled for that reason, and then, or not canceled, yeah, well, kind of canceled, I DNF'd it for that reason. Anyways, and then I kind of skim read the rest of them. Yeah, 7 and 8, I think would have been a fine plot line. It was very close to, like, what 1 and 2 were before. I think I could have liked that one, but, you know, way too far in the series, and there was still that couple in there that I don't care for. And then 9 and 10. Why would you end your series that way? I mean, like, it ends happily, but at the same time, it's like, what was the point of this? Why are suddenly everybody stars when they were reincarnated from people? I don't think this storyline or this Sailor Moon has a set lore or a set world building, because it felt kind of like the mangaka did whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted, however she wanted, in whatever type of thing. And yeah, I found the last 2 volumes, when I looked through it, I was just like, this is depressing. Like, everyone's dying. I mean, like, they all live and get a happy ending at the very end, but it's like, the very happy ending was like 2 pages. It was like, no, I'm sorry, I'm gonna need like 3 chapters of a happy ending. Sorry here. So, yeah. This one did not work for me, which, well, okay, the end volumes didn't work for me. 3 to 10 did not work for me. I really wanted this one too, because I really loved the first 2 volumes, and I still do. But the rest, no. Which is very disappointing, but it is what it is. And I know there's an awful lot of manga on this list, but I promised. I think the rest of them are, novels. So, yeah, I just read a lot of the manga earlier in the year. So anyways, let's move on. So the next one, this one was one of the books I didn't have really any expectations for. I just wanted to try this author. That is Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book of the Reckoners trilogy or something like that. It's like a superhero, supervillain type story. This book was very strange for me, because I read, like, I don't even remember how far I got, but I read the first part of it, like, really interesting. I was really sucked in. I really liked where the world building was. The action scenes were great. And then we got to a point where, like, they started info dumping a bit of world building, and it was, like, immediate light bulb hit, and I just, like, bloom, or actually my light bulb died, and I literally just went to, I don't care anymore. It's not like the book did anything wrong. It's not like I've read a book where they do info dumping through dialogue. I have, and I've still liked some of them. But this one was just like, I don't even know if that was it, or I just suddenly lost interest. That was super weird to me. I know this isn't one of his greater series, and I'm very hesitant to try any of his books now that I know about the agenda-driven stuff he's shoved into Stormlight Archive now. I will not be reading that series, but this one, I won't be continuing this one either, because that was weird. I don't know what happened. The book didn't even do anything to me, so no idea. That's my weird story of the day. Let's move on to the next one. This one I did have high anticipation for, but boy oh boy did it, like, have insta lust to the extreme, and that is Frozen Hearts and Death Magic by De Lateo? Possibly? Like, literally, first chapter, this girl rescues this Fae guy from a forest where he's, like, unconscious, and, you know, it's, like, raining buckets on him and stuff like that, and he's gonna freeze to death. That sort of thing. She rescues him, and then literally, like, when he's like, oh, do you need, like, you know, compensation for saving my life? And she's like, yeah, kiss me. You literally just met this guy, and he's, like, was unconscious. Like, you don't even know who he is. What the heck? I'm like, what? Also, this, I don't think this world building makes any sense. I couldn't make sense of it. I think I only read like 25% of this book. I don't even, did I get that far? I think I got that far. Because these chapters were really long, but this world building made absolutely no sense. These characters were like falling in love with each other instantly, and then like immediately thinking about what they'd do with each other if they were married or in the same room alone together, and like they're like literally these characters, because there's like two different couples, and they literally like they literally meet each other, and then they like literally 2 pages later, I kid you not, they're confessing their undying love for each other, kissing each other, and thinking of, you know, doing things in rooms together. I quit. Because also with that and the combined world building that made absolutely no sense, no, I'm done. I from the description, I had high hopes for this series because it was like, oh, this sounds really interesting, and it's like, it's not that interesting. This is actually quite terrifying. Moving on to the only 2 books out of this list that I own, or at least that I own physical copies of, and that is Redeemed and Reborn by H.L. Burke. These are books 2 and 3 in the Supervillain Rehabilitation Project series. These both frustrated me in a number of ways. I gave both of these 3 stars, so they're not terrible books. Just something about both of them. They annoyed me to no end for one reason or another. This one, Prism, annoyed me. I have no clue why. She just kept doing things, and I was just so irritated with her, and I just wanted to beat her over the head with her own book. Don't ask me why. Because it's like they were completely justifiable reasons and things that she was doing. But at the same time, I wanted to hit her. So I don't know. Book 2, I don't really even remember. It was fine. I don't know, at least towards the end the plot didn't seem to make much sense, in my opinion. I don't know, I just had some other issues with this. The book isn't bad. Neither one of these are bad. But yeah, they just kind of disappointed me, and yeah. Not fully sure why, but they disappointed me, and now I have beef with them because of it. Okay, this one's gonna be pretty quick, and that is Daughter of the Beastly Beauty by Michelle L. Levine. I apologize if I said that incorrectly. This one, purely, I read another short story by this author in an anthology and thought it was super funny. This is connected to that world. It's kind of like a prequel to it. So I read this one, and I was sorely disappointed. It wasn't funny at all. I barely could keep up with what the main character was thinking about half the time. It was kind of boring. I did finish it, but it was just there. And it wasn't nearly as funny or charming as the first one that I read by her, so yeah. It was just disappointing for that reason. So yeah, I gave it like 2 stars, so it wasn't terrible, but I also wouldn't care to read it ever again. So there's that. Yeah, then we have, oh my goodness, this one. This one I did have high hopes for because it sounded super interesting, sounded like something I would like. That is The Poison Prince by Kristen J. Dawson. This is part of the Once Upon a Prince series. This one was a Snow White retelling that drove me nuts. I quit it at like 35%, 30%, something like that. I think it was 30%. This one, I have a whole rant. If you want to hear more about this, I have a whole rant in my December reading wrap-up, which is partially why it's so blooming long. I will leave a link to that video in the description. It's near the end of the video. I don't know exactly where it is. But yeah, I went into a long rant of why I disliked this book so much and like how I would do it to fix it and stuff. So I would highly recommend just going through that video and finding that clip to hear all my thoughts on it, because I don't think I don't remember all of them. And yeah, I do say it was a very good dissertation rant on my part. So yeah, I would highly recommend that one, but mainly for the highlights. I was told these characters were friends rather than being shown beyond the first chapter. I didn't like how much information Snow was keeping from Max. Max's point of view didn't seem to be very prevalent, even though this whole series was supposed to be more about the guys' end of things rather than the girls. So I was very annoyed by that. Was that it? I think that was it. I think that was the main reasonings behind it, and I just got very frustrated with Snow as a character mostly. Overall, Max I didn't really have any issues with, aside from the fact that he like knew absolutely nothing because she gave him absolutely no information to go on. And yeah, so yeah, I did not care for it at all, so that's why I dropped it, which was disappointing because I really wanted to like this one, so, but it didn't work out, unfortunately. And then we have another book in that multi-author series, and that is The Awakened Prince by Laura Carter. I really thought I'd like this one more. Unfortunately, it turned out to have characters I didn't care for, a main character who supposedly had a character arc I couldn't see. I kind of went on a rant in that same December reading wrap-up video about this book too. Less so than The Poison Prince. But, yeah, more of my thoughts are there too about this one. I think I did it shortly after I did that one too. So if you find that clip where I was talking about The Poison Prince, it's in this one's in the same one, I think. Or it's in the very last one. Don't listen to me, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's in the very last clip of that video I talk about this book. So, yeah, The Awakened Prince, it had a father who was terrible to his son and only got a slap on the wrist at the end, and like, he was fine. He was just trying to help his son. It's like, no, you were a terrible father and should have paid for it, but you didn't. I only pretty much liked the magical trials and the action scenes at the end. The rest of the characters were bland. I did not care for it, and I was annoyed by a lot of the things, and yeah, it didn't work. I'm very sad, but it didn't work. I didn't have as high expectations for this one as I did The Poison Prince, but I did still expect to at least like it. And I didn't. Oops. Okay, and the last book I have to talk about, I did not technically read this book, but I read reviews of other people who did, and I also just want to mention it because I also want to mention I will not be continuing this series, even though I have really enjoyed this series and I am super sad by it. So, this is a disappointing book. It is also a worse book because even though I didn't read it, it let me down. And that is Unraveled by Shannon Messenger. Book 9.5 in the Keeper of the Lost City series, where she decided to stick in agenda-driven same-sex relationships. Yes. You guys have probably heard about this if you follow any other Christian booktubers who have been reading this series. Yeah, and this one, yeah, I read Lindsay's review about it. I will leave a link to that review in the description so you guys can read it. She sums it up very well. Also, a lot of people, even that stuff aside, a lot of people said the book was very boring and highly unnecessary, and even several people are speculating that the author has no idea how to finish this series, and that is why she keeps dragging it out, which I would kind of agree with, because, yeah, even in book 9, which I did like, Stellar Loon, there are parts where it's like literally the whole thing, it feels like the author's just reaching for things now, and she doesn't really know how to wrap up the series, or she and the publisher are just milking this thing for all it's worth. But I don't know how far that's going to get them now, because they stuck this stuff in it, which I would expect from a secular publisher, let's be real, that they would do this. But the main thing I have an issue with is that the author herself said, the way she created the world, she would not be putting these types of characters into her story world because it didn't fit her story world, which does not just include the magical elven cities. It also includes this version of Earth she is making, which, before anyone comes after me about that, yes, when you are writing a series, even if it's a contemporary, it is still world building and your own world, because what you are writing in a contemporary story is not happening in this real world. It is still fiction. Therefore, it is still your world as the author, even if you're doing it on planet Earth with places that exist in this reality. So, yeah. Shannon Messenger, when she came up with a fantasy world, she also came up with her alternate reality of what Earth is like. So, technically, she lied to her fandom, her fan base. Yeah, she probably ticked off the people beforehand saying that she wouldn't put it in representation. And then, they're probably happy now. And now she has ticked off pretty much a huge chunk of her fan base, from what I can tell from both reviews on Amazon and Goodreads. She has really, really ticked off a lot of people because of this. A lot of kids, which are her fans, and yes, these people exist in the world, but it doesn't mean you should shoehorn it into a book in phrases that Lindsay actually gives in her review. She gives the exact text that it says in there. And the way they sound, it sounds shoehorned in like crazy. It just sounds like they just crowbarred it in there. It doesn't even sound natural to natural dialogue. Yeah, it's just, no. I'm done with this series, which is very sad because I was really enjoying it, but I can't justify supporting something like this in a kid's book. You know what? Stick this stuff in adult books all you want. But leave kids out of this, okay? This is a middle grade series. I'm done with my soapbox. But yeah, that is the reason this book, even though I did not read it, is on this list, because I'm informing you guys now I will not be continuing this series, and I don't recommend it. Even though I did before in a lot of my previous videos, I do not recommend the series anymore because of those issues. And with that, we are done ranting about my worst and most disappointing books of 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Also, if you disagree with me on any of these points and you want to talk about it in the comments, please be nice about it. Because I will warn you ahead of time, if you're rude or disrespectful in the comments at any time, I will delete your post. Just letting you know. I do not tolerate stuff like that. If you want to be nice about it and just state your opinion on something, go right ahead. But be polite. And if I sense any type of you're just trying to pick a fight, your comment's gone. Just so you know. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope, yeah, I gave you some insight into some of these books. I hope you enjoyed my rants. And if you want to list down below in the comments your most disappointing book, at least one or more, feel free to. I would love to hear about it and see if there are any books I should be avoiding for certain things that I might not like in my stories. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you next time.